Have you ever had the feeling that the day went by too fast, that you did many things, solved problems, replied to messages, fulfilled responsibilities, but at the end there was that quiet question inside you? Did I really live this day in a way that glorified God? That is a deep question, and perhaps even an uncomfortable one, because it forces us to look at how we use our time, not just as something that passes, but as something that can be consecrated, directed, transformed. And here is something that can completely change your perspective. Maybe glorifying God is not only found in great spiritual moments, but in the way you live every minute of your day. And that is exactly what men like John Wesley understood so deeply. So stay with me until the end of this video, because you will discover that your time, exactly as it is today, can become a powerful instrument in God's hands. Before we continue, I want to make a simple but important invitation. If this message has already started to touch your heart, leave your like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments, "I want to use my time for God." It may seem like a small phrase, but it carries a spiritual decision that can transform your routine. Now take a deep breath. Slow your mind for a few seconds, and let's reflect together. Most people live time as if it were something that just needs to be filled. We wake up, follow a sequence of tasks, deal with unexpected situations, get distracted by things that are not always important, and when the day ends, we feel that something was missing, not necessarily productivity, but purpose. And maybe the problem is not a lack of time, but a lack of spiritual direction in how we use time. John Wesley understood something that many still have not realized. Time is not just a resource, it is a spiritual responsibility. Every moment carries the opportunity to reflect something greater, to live with intention, to align our actions with what glorifies God. And this changes everything, because it stops being about separating time for God and time for life, and becomes about living all of life with God. But here is the most important and most human part of all this. You do not need to change everything at once. You do not need to create a perfect routine or turn your day into something rigid and impossible to maintain. What you need is to start seeing time differently. For example, think about how you begin your day. Many times, the first thing we reach for when we wake up is our phone, our worries, or the rush to start solving things. But what if before all of that you paused for 1 minute, just 1 minute, and said something simple? God, this day is yours. That small gesture may seem insignificant, but it changes the direction of your heart, because the way we start the day influences how we live the rest of it. Now imagine carrying that same awareness into other moments of the day. While you work, study, talk to people, face challenges, each of these situations can become an opportunity to glorify God, not because you are doing something extraordinary, but because you are doing the ordinary with a heart aligned with God. This means working with integrity, even when no one is watching. It means treating people with respect, even when they do not do the same to you. It means choosing patience instead of irritation, choosing forgiveness instead of resentment, choosing truth instead of convenience. These choices may seem small, but they are deeply spiritual. And this is exactly where many people get it wrong. They think that glorifying God only happens when they pray, sing, or participate in religious activities. But the truth is that glorifying God is found in the way you live. It is in how you react. It is in how you decide. It is in how you use the time you have been given. Now pause for a moment and think about your routine. Think about the hours you spend every day on ordinary activities, working, studying, commuting, talking, resting. And now think about this. What if each of those hours could be lived in a way that honors God? This does not mean living under pressure or trying to be perfect. It means living with awareness. John Wesley organized his time with intention. He had defined moments for prayer, reading, work, and rest. But more than that, he lived every part of his day with purpose. He understood that every minute was an opportunity to serve, to grow spiritually, and to impact other people. And maybe that is the point we most need to learn today. Because we live in a time full of distractions. Time slips away easily through social media, unnecessary worries, comparisons, and activities that do not add real value to our lives. Without realizing it, we spend hours that could be used in a more meaningful way. But instead of producing guilt, this reflection should produce awareness. Because it is always possible to start again. It is always possible to adjust. It is always possible to decide to live differently. If this message is speaking to you, I want to invite you to do something simple right now. Write in the comments, "I will live with purpose." This can mark the beginning of a real change in your routine. Now imagine the end of the day. After everything you have lived, you pause for a few minutes and reflect. You think about your attitudes, your choices, your reactions. You thank God for the good things, recognize where you can improve, and place the next day in His hands. This simple habit creates something powerful, a conscious life, an aligned life, a life that does not just pass, but glorifies. And here is something very important for you to remember. Using your time for God's glory does not mean doing extraordinary things every day. It means doing ordinary things with a heart extraordinarily aligned with God. Maybe it is caring for your family with love. Maybe it is doing your work with excellence. Maybe it is listening to someone who needs attention. Maybe it is resisting a wrong attitude. Maybe it is pausing for a few minutes to pray in the middle of the day. These things may seem simple, but they are deeply spiritual. And over time, these small decisions begin to transform your life from the inside out. Now I want to ask you a very sincere question. If you continued living exactly as you are today, would your time reflect the glory of God? If the answer is not completely, then that is not a reason for discouragement. It is an invitation to begin differently, an invitation to live with more intention, an invitation to transform each moment into something meaningful. And all of this begins with a decision, a simple but powerful decision. If this video spoke to your heart, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to hear this message. And before you go, write in the comments, "My time will be for God," because in the end, time will pass anyway. But when it is lived with God, it is never wasted. Now I want you to pause for a few seconds and be completely honest with yourself, because this part is not just meant to inspire you. It is meant to teach you how to live something practical, something you can apply today, right now in the next few hours. Understanding that we should use our time for the glory of God is important, but knowing how to do that in practice is what truly transforms a life. And that is exactly what men like John Wesley understood. Spirituality is not theory. It is daily practice. It is constant decision. It is a repeated choice, even when we don't feel like it. The first step to using your time for God's glory begins with something very simple, yet extremely powerful: intention when you wake up. Most people start their day on autopilot, already thinking about problems, tasks and pressures, and without realizing it, they hand over control of their day to circumstances. But when you wake up and decide, even for 1 minute, to dedicate that day to God, something changes internally. It's not about perfect words, it's about direction. A simple "Lord, guide my day, my words, my decisions" already aligns your heart with a greater purpose. This may not immediately change external situations, but it changes how you respond to them. After that comes a principle that almost no one practices consciously: spiritual awareness throughout the day. This means learning to remember God in the middle of ordinary activities. And here is the key. You don't need to stop everything to pray long prayers all the time. You need to develop small connections throughout the day. Before responding to someone, before making a decision, before reacting to something that irritates you, you can pause internally, even for a few seconds, and turn your heart back to God. This habit creates a kind of continuous presence, where you are not living disconnected, but walking with God in every situation. But there is something even deeper. The way you react to situations reveals how you are using your time spiritually. Many times we think glorifying God is only about what we do, but it is also and mainly about how we react. When someone provokes you, when something goes wrong, when frustration appears, that moment becomes a spiritual opportunity. You can react the way you always have, or you can choose to act differently, with patience, self-control, and wisdom. And that choice, even if no one sees it, glorifies God in a profound way. John Wesley took this very seriously. He understood that every reaction was a reflection of the heart's condition. That is why he not only organized his time externally, but also cared for what was happening within him. And here is a practice that can transform your life. Spiritual self-examination throughout the day, not in the sense of judging or condemning yourself, but in the sense of observing, asking yourself, how am I reacting? What am I thinking? Does this honor God? These simple questions bring awareness, and awareness produces change. Another essential point is learning to sanctify the ordinary. Many people wait for special moments to live something spiritual. But the truth is that God is interested in your everyday life, in your work, your tasks, your conversations. When you do something with dedication, honesty, and the right intention, it becomes an act of worship. Working well, studying responsibly, treating someone with respect, all of this can glorify God when done with the right heart. But let's be honest, the greatest challenge today is distraction. We live in a time where our time is constantly being stolen by things that don't always add value. Social media, empty content, excessive worries. All of this consumes precious hours. And this is not about eliminating everything, but about having control over your time. Asking, is this bringing me closer to my purpose or pulling me away from it? That awareness completely changes how you use your hours. If this message is awakening something in you, I invite you to pause for a moment and write in the comments, I will take care of my time, because this decision is more spiritual than it seems. Now, there is a moment in the day that many people ignore, but it is extremely powerful, the end of the day. John Wesley valued this moment deeply because he understood that finishing the day well is just as important as starting it well. Before going to sleep, he would reflect, give thanks, and realign his heart before God. And this creates continuous spiritual growth, because you don't just live the day, you learn from it. And perhaps here lies one of the greatest secrets of all. Using your time for the glory of God is not about perfection. It is about consistency. You will fail at times, you will get distracted, you will react poorly sometimes, and that's okay. What matters is returning, adjusting, and continuing. Every return is growth. Every attempt is building something. Now imagine your life a few months from now living this way, starting your day with intention, remembering God throughout the day, reacting with more awareness, evaluating your actions at night. This creates a real deep, visible transformation, not only in your spirituality but in the way you live, think, and relate to others. And in the end, something begins to happen. You stop living an ordinary day and start living a purposeful day. Now I want to make you one final invitation, and this is the most important one. Don't let this moment pass without a decision. Write in the comments, my time belongs to God. And if this message is helping you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to learn how to live with purpose. Because in the end, it's not about having more time. It's about using the time you already have for something eternal. Now, before we finish, I want to take you to an even deeper level, because everything you've heard so far can easily become just inspiration if there isn't a real, practical, and consistent decision. And this is exactly where many people stop. They understand, they agree, they are even moved, but they don't turn it into a lifestyle. Using all your time for the glory of God is not something that happens by accident. It is something built through conscious choices, repeated every day, even when no one is watching, even when there is no recognition, even when it seems like nothing is changing. And this is exactly how John Wesley lived. He didn't wait for perfect days to live with God. He chose to live every day with God, regardless of the circumstances. There is an essential point that needs to be clear within you. You will not use your time well if you do not intentionally decide what truly matters. Time will always be filled. The question is with what? And when you don't define spiritual priorities, other things automatically take that space. Worries, distractions, urgencies that are not always important. Before you realize it, the day is over, and what truly builds your life has been pushed aside. That is why living for the glory of God begins with a quiet but firm decision. God will not just be part of my time, He will be the center of it. And this becomes something very practical, very real. Learning to live with an awareness of His presence, not only in specific moments, but throughout the entire day. Because when you understand that God is present, listening, seeing, and walking with you in every detail of your life, your attitudes begin to change. Your words become more careful, your decisions more intentional, your reactions more aligned, not out of obligation, but because you begin to live before God. And this transforms the ordinary into something spiritual. It turns simple tasks into acts of worship and difficult moments into opportunities for growth. But there is something even deeper, something few people talk about, and something John Wesley understood very well. Using your time for the glory of God also means learning to say no, because it is impossible. To live with purpose while saying yes to everything. There are things that are not necessarily wrong, but they steal your time, your energy, and your focus. And when you begin to discern this, you start protecting your time more intentionally. You begin choosing more carefully what you consume, where you invest your hours, and with whom you share your attention, and this creates space for what truly matters. And here comes a very human point. Many times you will fail in this process. You will waste time on things you shouldn't. You will get distracted. You will realize that the day has passed and you didn't live as you intended. But that is not the end. That is part of growth. Because living for the glory of God is not about never failing. It is about always returning. It is about adjusting your path. It is about not giving up on living with purpose, even after a day that didn't go as you hoped. Now imagine the impact this can have on your life, not only spiritually, but in everything, in your mind, your emotions, your relationships. Because when you begin to live with God in every moment, something changes within you. You become more aware, more balanced, more directed. You start to see value in simple things. You begin to respond better to difficulties. You begin to live with more peace because your life stops being just a sequence of tasks and becomes a journey with purpose. And perhaps the greatest change of all is this: you stop living waiting for special moments with God, and you begin to recognize God in every moment. Now I want to ask you one final question, and this question can define how you will live from now on. What will you do with your time starting today? Will you continue living on autopilot, letting the day pass, reacting to circumstances? Or will you choose to live with intention, awareness, and purpose? If there is a sincere desire within you to live differently, then turn that into a decision now. Not later, not tomorrow, but now. Write in the comments, "My time will be for the glory of God." Because when you declare that, you are taking a real step in your spiritual journey. And if this message spoke to you, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to hear this, because many people don't need more time. They need direction for the time they already have. Because in the end, Time is one of the greatest gifts God has given us, and how you use that gift defines the life you are building, defines who you are becoming, and above all, defines whether your life is reflecting what truly matters. And maybe today is exactly the day everything begins to change.